Alright, in this lecture, we're going to be creating a wood grain texture. Then we're going to take that texture and apply it to a 3D form. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I just want to sketch out my wood texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a very simple box right here that we can create our wood texture within. And then we can go ahead and get started. So first what I want to do is I want to figure out how I'm going to create this texture. Now once again, it's very important to look at reference to create your texture. So I have some reference sitting off to the side of me that I'm looking at on my computer screen, and I'm using that to guide me in how to create my texture. So the first thing I notice is that it's all pretty dark. There aren't really any highlights on it that are completely white, so I'm going to go ahead and add in a very light gray value on top of my entire square. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add in all the cracks that I see. So on my wood, I see a lot of cracks, and so all I'm going to do is just lightly sketch those in where I think I want them to be. And again, I'm doing this very lightly so that if I need to erase anything, I can always come back and erase. And I also see a hole right here, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in. All right, perfect. So I think that's about where I want all of my cracks to be, so now I can go ahead and darken those in. So I'm going to keep them pretty thin, but make them as dark as possible. And as we get to the end of these cracks right here, we're going to have them sort of fade out and get really thin. And on this one right here, we're going to have it fade out and get thin on both ends of the crack since it doesn't connect back to the end of our wood. And just to vary our line quality, I'm going to go ahead and make this one have a little bit of a wider area right there. Then I'll go ahead and add in this last crack. Great. Now we can work on the texture of our contouring line. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these edges out just a little bit and really enhance those cracks by changing the outline shape of my wood. Like so. Then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this bottom area. And then I want to leave this side a little bit lighter since this is where the light is coming down from, is that side. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start adding in some of my wood grain texture. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to first off turn my paper like so, because it'll be easier to draw it this way. And then I'm just going to lightly draw in some straight lines like so, and these are going to make up my wood grain. So there's different things we can do. We can add in a knot, which is basically just a swirly or a couple of circles within each other, a bunch of rings like so, and then we can just continue to add in that grain around it. So the grain generally tries to steer clear of knots, and so it'll just go around that knot right there. And again, I'm looking back at my reference just to make sure that things look correct. And when you're creating your texture, it's not like drawing a still life drawing. You don't have to follow it exactly. You just want to look at it to get some ideas and also to understand the way the light and the shadow plays off of it. And we can have our wood grain cross over these cracks because they're just cracks. They're not stopping the wood grain where it is. It's just a crack in the wood. All right, great. So now we have our wood grain texture in there. I'm gonna go ahead and go back in there and darken all of my crack lines because they've gotten a little bit lighter after I added in all that wood grain. All right, perfect. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add in my midtone, and just like when we did our bricks, I wanna leave out this upper edge or this bottom edge of my wood for a highlight on my cracks and on the top of the wood. So let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna switch over to a sharpened pencil. And so we want to add our midtone right up to this edge. Just like so. And then when we get to our cracks, we only want to add it up right up to that edge also. So we want to add a little bit of a white space underneath each one of our cracks. So we create that third dimension by adding a highlight on that edge. We'll come all the way over to here and do the same. So we'll add it right up to this edge. Like so. And we're just going to continue to do that all the way throughout our wood. We can even sort of darken these edges in a little bit more just to create some more contrast and shadow. Just like so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that throughout my entire wood texture. All right, great. So now we have in that mid-tone shadow. Now, real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and redarken in all of my cracks. And then I'm gonna go ahead and redarken in some of my wood grain. So especially on this knot, I just want that to stand out a little bit more. All right, perfect. So now we have our wood grain texture. I'm also going to add in a dark shadow on this bottom edge. Since this is the opposite side of our light source, we can go ahead and do a little bit of the same thing on this side. All right, great. So how do we apply this to a 3D form? Well, let's start off by drawing a box. So this is going to be a wooden box. And I'm not really worrying about creating perfect perspective right now. I'm just going to quickly sketch that in like so. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and apply this to our form. And so our wood grain needs to be running in this direction on this face, and on this surface it needs to be running in this direction. And then we're going to see inside our box, and so we need our texture to be running in this direction on that face and in this direction on that face. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add in those cracks. So I'll decide where I want those to be. Again, don't forget to have your cracks running in the same direction as your wood grain. And then we're going to see the edge of this wood right here, and then we can go ahead and begin the next piece of wood right here. Then we'll go ahead and come into this inside area of our box, and we'll go ahead and add in that little bit there also with our little cracks. Then we'll do this side. Then we want to decide where our highlight shadow and our mid-tone shadow and our core shadow are going to be. So I'm going to make this side of our box our highlight side. So that means this side right here is going to be our mid-tone. So we can go ahead and fill that in with a mid-tone value. And we want to start out by filling these in with our mid-tones and our core shadows. That way when we add detail in, it doesn't get wiped out later by adding in our values. So we'll go ahead and fill that area in. And then since the highlight is on this side for our box, that means this inside wall is also going to be a highlight. Except there's probably going to be a cast shadow being cast by this wall right here on our box. So that means we can go ahead and add in a cast shadow on this inside. So I'm going to go ahead and first fill this side in with another mid-tone shadow, since it's on the same plane as this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in that cast shadow. So the cast shadow is going to be cast off down at this angle like so. And then once it hits this wall, it's just going to go straight across like this. And then we can go ahead and fill that in with a darker value. And our core shadow is going to be on the other side of this wall right here. And so we're not actually going to see our core shadow. Now I'm not going to worry about putting a cast shadow on our surface for now. Let's just add in the texture. So what we want to do first is we want to really break this up into different sections. So let's start with this first one, the highlighted area. So let's start by adding in a little bit of a darker line along this bottom so we can really start getting some definition. And also we want to see this edge of the box, so we need to really draw that out also. Like so. And then we're also going to want to see this top edge of the box. And then we're going to darken this edge in just a little bit more. Next, let's go ahead and add some wood grain texture in there. So just very lightly and with a new sharpened pencil, I'm going to go ahead and add in some interesting wood grain in there. And also make sure that you're going with the direction of your box. Then I'm going to go ahead and redarken in these cracks. All right, great. Now let's go ahead and move on to another side of our box. And I'm going to leave some of the detail out because this box is so small, it would be really hard to get in there and add in our mid-tone shadow. So I'm just going to leave it like this for now. And then I'm going to come over to this side, which is my mid-tone shadow side. And I'll go ahead and add in a top edge to this wall of our box. Then I'll go ahead and add an edge to that, and same with this side. And then I can go ahead and start adding in some wood grain in there. So I'm going to start right over here. I'll just quickly sketch that in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Great. Now I want to go ahead and add in my darker shadow on top of this so I can create a highlight underneath these edges of my cracks. So real quick, let me redarken in those cracks so I know where those are. And then I can go ahead and start adding in that shadow that will be a little bit darker than what I already have there. And then I'm going to leave out that tiny little ledge underneath my crack, so that way we create that three-dimensional form. All right, great. Now I'm gonna really quick just add in a little bit more of that wood grain back in there, because we kind of lost it in that dark value. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and move on to these inside walls. So I'm gonna go ahead and first off darken my cast shadow a little bit more, and maybe even soften that edge just a little bit, like so. And then this side of my cast shadow is actually going to be very dark, darker than this cast shadow right here on this wall, because it's already in shadow. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add in a top ledge to this side of my box, like so. And same with this side. So we'll have that connect over like this, and then come all the way over. All right, perfect. So now what we want to do is we just want to copy the same thing we did on this wall over to this one. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some simple wood texture or wood grain. Great. And then I'm going to add the same dark shadowing on this side of my box. So really quick, I'm going to darken those cracks back in. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in some shadowing so we can get that three-dimensional form by adding that highlight right underneath our crack. And then I'm just going to go ahead and darken these bottom edges of my box so it's a bit more grounded and also stands out a little bit more from my background. All right, great. That brings us to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, you learned how to create a realistic wood texture. Then we took that wood texture and we learned how to apply that to a 3D form so we can create actual realistic drawings that aren't just texture but are actual objects. I really hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for watching.